thank you for my talk in the agenda. My talk, my presentation is about the fundamental antinomy, individual, collective, and how it works in collaborations, and some issues and how this tension, this fundamental tension, can be mitigated. And what are the issues? So first of all, as it is often said, this antinomy is a perennial issue, perennial discussion and tension. We can say that we can find some early discussions of this tension even in Aristotle writings. For example, he argued that he argued that basically only a practical solution of this tension can be found in the constitution of particular government, and one of his solutions was to propose some constitution which contains some elements of democracy, some elements of monarchy, some elements of aristocracy, and only this combination can help, in his view, to reconcile individual interests with collective interests. And not less known the solution and discussion of antinomies in Immanuel Kant writings. And one of he found several antinomies, and one of his most relevant antinomy relevant for the discussion of individual and collective freedoms is his antinomy of freedom or causality. And although he found only a local solution, he proposed that the freedom is a feature of or a trait of a nominal world, but in our phenomenal world, this world is governed by laws and causality, and in this sense, freedom is lacking in the phenomenal world. People who discuss this basically tend to argue either for more individual freedom or more collective priority and collective freedom. And one of the solutions is the middle solutions to constrain, to limit the collective, the rights of the state, or in the case of science or the collaborations. And I would only mention, you definitely know many more names to discuss this issue, and I would only mention two continental philosophers, Habermas and Abel, who argued that about the ideal communicative community. And one of, at least Abel, found metaphysical projections and metaphysical connections between the dialogue in the community, in so to say, in the social world, and the ideal communicative community. And their arguments, basically, they are rich, but some of their traits are that Habermas more argued that this solution and consensus in the community between the tension between individual and collective can be mitigated on the level of community, because basically of the rationality, the inherent rationality of the discussion. We are all rational, that's why we all can find the common language. I would just only mention here that rationality can be different. For example, scientific epistemic arguments are perfectly rational. And on the other hand, non-epistemic, for example, career interests or any other this sort of interests, they're also perfectly rational. In this case, there's not a resolution, because basically any scientist or any person belongs to many communicative communities, not only the one at large we belong to. The collaboration we belong to, the institution, and many other identities which people have. basically, Apple argued that the solution can be found of this tension between collaboration and or collective and individual can be found because of mutual dependence, that we are all in the same boat, but again, as I said, that we are all in many boats at the same time. So, and that's again the tension within the definitions of rational. And some people, some philosophers argued for that the solution of this tension can be found in even in fate, because if all people in the society, in the community, share the same fate, that's why it even the subordination, hierarchy, or any sort of centralization in the society, even not necessary, because people will find a mutual understanding due to the shared fate. But as we know, this well, people have different faith, and also there are people who are some philosophers or thinkers who argue that scientists share the same faith, but it's not religious faith in the usual sense, but it's faith on in numerical or mathematical cognizability of the world. Again, that's an interesting argument, but on the same time, as we know, that people belong to many social groups at the same time, and each of them can share different values and different faiths. So and so the bottom line, the solution which I will be discussing probably the most to the end of this talk is the Popperian solution, the open society, because in open society, in his seminal work, Open Society and Its Enemies, he argued that the dissent should be tolerated, and dissent can even enrich and foster openness of the society and bring a success to the society. And I will try to discuss what is particularly difficult in a scientific community, in scientific collaboration, in implementation of this open society, and how this can be alleviated or how can it be mitigated. First of all, the issue between individual and collective, when their interests differ and push in different directions, it is a dissent between individuals within one society, one community, one collaboration, or a dissent between individual and collective. I would like to make one point which I think is very important in definitions. Dissent is not the same as disagreement. Many people have disagreement with one another in the same collaboration, the same group, anywhere. Dissent is such a kind of disagreement which eventually becomes an act of public disagreement, on public expression of disagreement or opposition, what is important, which is expressed publicly, and eventually this is the act which often undermines the epistemic authority, the scientific collaborations. As you know from case studies, I will discuss a few of case studies. So, what is good in the dissent? The dissent is basically not dissent, but disagreement. Disagreement enriches with different perspectives. The same discourse, the same public discussion field. It adds new theories, new interpretations, new hypotheses. In this sense, it enriches the scientific result and scientific perspectives, scientific views. On the other hand, the ways that tends to suppress dissent technically in a group, in a collaboration, in a society, very often leads to groupthink. It leads to even mistakes and errors in interpretations, when everybody tends to agree with something which people in power put forth, for example. And that's an issue with the self-suppression or disagreement suppression. On the other hand, there are some cons that dissent usually, or disagreement when it becomes to dissent. It leads to a conflict within a group. It can leads to undermining epistemic claims of the collaboration, and it basically can destroy the collaboration and destroy its scientific results. Mentioned probably a few cases, and also it brings additional costs, because instead of one interpretation, you need several groups working into different directions. There's more time, more workload, and more money to spend. So basically, yes, please.
The consensus is exactly the same problem.
Consensus.
So if you're pretending that there's consensus when there's not, that's not exactly the same risk.
From consensus, conflict from consensus, but how can consensus lead to conflict? Because everybody agrees with everyone.
Okay, if you're pretending to the outside that there's consensus, but there isn't actually, then that can also be fake consensus. When you're pretending to the outside, well, there's consensus.
Yes.
But the dissenting groups don't feel like they're heard, or
yes.
They don't feel like their voice is heard. They don't know too well. You do additional world and work, and then at some point turns out that the consensus was wrong, leaves you undermining the confidence more.
Yes, yes, it is. I think it is another aspect of suppression of dissent, because when you suppress, everybody tends to agree, and formally. On the other hand, they can have reservations which later lead to dissent. So later lead to conflict. So some delayed conflicts, if I understand correctly.
Yeah, like in the opera.
Oh, I will get to opera. Sure, this is just introductory things. So basically, additional cost. There are several classification of dissent, and even in the focus group we discussed several classification of dissent. I'll discuss in mine, which is quite similar to many. First of all, I distinguish, and people distinguish, epistemological aspect of dissent. You can disagree about the conclusion, like the Higgs boson mass on 125 GeV. You disagree with this, the epistemic statement. This epistemological. There are methodological dissent. For example, one of the LSND collaboration neutrino results I will be discussing later, when one dissenting scientist published a paper that 3 events found in the collaboration's data support his statement about the neutrino oscillations. So that's interpretation of data. Collaboration interpreted data as something not supporting neutrino oscillations, but he interpreted them as supporting oscillations. So that's methodological. They use different computational or data analysis routine to the same data to produce the same. So basically, this also eventually comes down to epistemological, but it starts above that. It starts at the methodological level. On the other hand, there are axiological, value-related dissent. It also can be called non-epistemological. For example, they can disagree just with the. You can disagree with the personality, with people with the person who is making the statement, or how they behave, or people can have career perspectives or other non-epistemological arguments. Why they want to, in particular, to argue for a particular position, for a particular result, because it brings them more benefit in terms of non-epistemic or in terms of some more tangible outcomes for them. So basically, there are three reasons. Yes.
Are those, for instance, credit disputes? Like, I don't want to participate in this paper because you're not listing me in the proper way as an author. Is that the kind of thing you have?
Yes, absolutely. Sometimes people excluded from discourse or excluded from participation in the paper, publish alternative paper or alternative results, mostly exactly because they feel offended in this way. So that's exactly value-based dissensus. And basically, just to say a few words about the prehistory of this value component in the scientific community, I would say that in the Hallelian science, in the science in the time of Galileo, you could perfectly constrain yourself with epistemological and methodological arguments, avoiding any value based. Doesn't mean that it was exactly the case, because some historians even discuss how Galileo efficiently used his discovery of spots on the moon, or his development of telescope, used for personal benefits, because he worked for Italian dukes and earned good living just showing them spots on the moon, because it was kind of high value access to some sacred value, sacred knowledge about the sky, about the spheres out of Earth. On the other hand, it was not absolutely necessary. You could imagine how you like study gravitation by dropping rocks from Pisa Tower or something like this, even if it was not a historical case, it's just an anecdote. But nevertheless, you can imagine how you do this without any social or political aspect. But later, after the institutionalization of science, what arose, I'm trying to coin the term as a joint economy. It's not to say that that scientific knowledge became based on economy, became based on non-epistemic values, but what appeared actually in all kinds of social institutions is the parallel space, is the adjoint world of economy of symbolic capital, as sociologists say it. So, or prestige, positions, grants, publications, citation, all this stuff. It's not to say, as in 1980s social constructivists, that they used to argue that basically, like for example, in Andrew Pickering books on social construction of quarks, that everything is social. All these quarks thing is just argued for in interest of non-epistemic interest of science. Scientists just want to live in a world where quarks exist. They just make more money of a kind and a prestige. Well, that it's not true. Of course, it's not science. Is not all science is just that. Of course, there is an absolutely parallel world of knowledge and epistemology. But on the other hand, these two worlds they are adjacent. These two worlds, this economy, it is adjoined. It cannot exist without them. In this case, this started. I think the big science started with Manhattan Project in 1942. It's important that the famous Merton's book about disinterestedness and communitarism, it was published exactly in 1942, before big science was established, because big science evolved. This was just these institutional affairs, they were just not known at times when Merton worked. That's why his framework is not broadly applicable to the contemporary science. It's much more than just disinterestedness. But nevertheless, that's institutionalization, the bottom line. Institutionalization of science is what exactly brought this to scientific world, this adjacent economy, which is basically irremovable, unfortunately. And just to mention 3 case studies in opera, which Niels mentioned, the question is, can all dissents known from recent or well-known case studies be explained by non-epistemic interest? Probably, because One of them is LS&D collaboration. I'm not mentioning the names because you can find the literature, but I'm not. I don't want to say anything about the particular people, but that's the case. LS&D collaboration, neutrino oscillations, and one dissenting scientist published alternative paper in the same issue of Physics Letters about which contradicted the collaboration statement. Collaboration published paper that there are no neutrino oscillations, and he published that he found 3 events which are basically can be interpreted as supporting the neutrino oscillation claim. Basically, it was a methodological and epistemological dissent. It was dissent with the data analysis routine. It was dissent with the epistemic claim. Nevertheless, he was an early career researcher who was like, and I think after this publication, he made a good or kind of yes scientific career. So this was kind of, it was an issue for a collaboration or kind of a conflict in the collaboration, but at the level of a community at large, it is perfectly acceptable because the scientist found his way in academia, and basically there's no D0, CDF. I think there's 2 sister experiments, CDF and D0. D0 top quark experimentalist. Also, dissenting scientist published the paper based on collaboration data, but he was there were only 3 authors: himself and two well-known theorists. There are no good information sources for why there were 2 of them, and why he chose theorists to invite to this paper. But you know that Nobel Prize can be awarded to no more than 3 people. Nevertheless, this scientist, despite of this scandal, he made a great, very good, successful career in academia. And so, and again, the opera's case, rather than those 2, they were not initiated by early career researcher. One of the group heads, group leaders, not say published, observed several events of neutrinos, which can be interpreted as neutrinos moving with the speed faster than light, superluminal neutrinos. Actually, how that happened? They used GPS to measure the time which neutrino flies between Italy and Switzerland. And this group was responsible for the particular optical cable connection. They found that at some connection scenarios, the timing is such that neutrino could be imagined as traveling faster than light. And despite arguments from other collaborating groups, which tried to warn them that it's just a connection issue, even bypassing a big CERN seminar, not bringing it to the seminar, they went directly to the New York Times and declared that they made a seminal discovery. It was published in New York Times, and then 1 year later, they published correction paper that was not actually discovery. It was a technical issue artifact. So nevertheless, in all these cases, when what I'm saying, when I disagree with you in a collaboration about the interpretation of something, I'm bringing it to your attention. I discuss it with you, and we agree that the next run or next stage of analysis, we will put particular emphasis on this area, and we'll kind of take more data, more checks, and it's not bad to appoint this person as responsible for this analysis or something like this. Nevertheless, when you bypass your colleagues, bypass your collaboration and go to a newspaper, magazine, or something like this is your discovery. That's an indication. Basically, it's not an argument, but it's indication of non-epistemic interest, which essentially essentially lie in the ground of methodological or epistemological arguments. Again, dissent and not disagreement. When disagreement becomes dissent, it's already a conflicting option perspective. So basically, what I'm proposing, what are the mitigation strategies possible? There are no easy of them, and many of them have been discussed. Many of them have been discussed. One of them is that to allow, as people want multiple interpretations, to allow multiple interpretation of the same data. Basically, experiments consist of two stages: project, when they build a facility, and experiment, when they run and analyze. I think the second stage can be separated, even if it happens at the same time. Measurement and analysis can be performed by different groups, people from outside or even from the community, or volunteers or whatever who wants to participate can be invited to analyze the data and work on interpretations. And basically, what is good in that, it can be very analogous to the development of experimental sciences. You can find, for example, in Adolf Franklin's book, 2 examples: neutrino mass experiment. Neutrino is famous for this also, and fifth form experiments. It's like, for example, the history usually of this experiment says something like this: some experiments measure some effect, trying to measure neutrino mass or fifth form, and they don't find anything. Just increase the limit of registration, but not a particular discovery result. Sometimes one or two experiments publish contradictory results. They publish that they have found some. In neutrino experiment, there's a famous group by Klapdor Klein-Grothaus, who claimed he has found neutrino mass, like 1,000 of EV or something like this. Or there were groups which claimed they have found fifth form indication. Nevertheless, other experiments didn't confirm that. They tried to figure out their methodology, their flaws in their methodology. They were not able. Nobody found errors. But later, several new experiments at a higher level of sensitivity, they repeated the measurements and they didn't find anything. And after that, those dissenting results were just forgotten. They exist in papers, they exist in the collective knowledge, but people just know that they don't trust. We don't trust them. They say we know them, we don't trust. That's how erroneous or dissenting results, which are not confirmed later, just disappear in vain. It's not the issue for science itself, because it is a historical epistemology. This knowledge evolves in history, and at the later stages, history corrects the incorrect knowledge. So basically, even in this case of multiple experiments, multiple interpretations, society, community at large, eventually learns something correct, despite of this. And yes, it costs more money, probably, it costs more time, but nevertheless, it ends also in something consistent with others. So I think something like this can be also expanded to collaboration. So please to think about this. Multiple interpretations can compete for arguing for interpretation of particular data set or many data sets, and eventually most of interpretations should and probably will converge on the correct result. What is the showstopper here? Basically it is a traditions of community, which basically don't support dissent, because basically dissent costed a lot of issues for too many collaborations. For example, there are some rumors that the conflict about top quark mass costed Nobel Prize to Fermilab, because Fermilab has no Nobel Prize award, despite it has existed for about 60 years. It made a lot of research. For example, it measured the quark mass, one of the fundamental particles in the Standard Model. Nevertheless, it was not awarded. The discovery was not awarded a Nobel Prize. And as people say, it's likely because there was sufficient number of scandals related to this. And they simply didn't know whom to award the Nobel Prize. Yes, because several people published several papers about this, and who is false, who is right. They don't know. It's also perfectly understandable. So, what can be a solution here in this case? First of all, top-tier recognition and promotion should be based on the participation in the collaboration, in the contribution, in the co-authorship in the collaboration, but not on the primary authorship or a management position in the collaboration. Because yes, please. Oh, sure. Yeah. So not on managerial position, because if you look at the Nobel Prizes for experimental research recently, at least 3 or 4 cases I know, it is LIGO, it is neutral current, it is several recent experiments. It is Nobel Prizes are awarded to managers, and it becomes a value for experimentalists to strive to become a manager rather than do their technical and discovery work. So that's one of the things. And second, it cannot nobody can basically insist that Alfred Nobel's will can be altered or something like this. But nevertheless, it would be just basically to award high recognition prizes or such as Nobel Prizes or other higher achievements to people for technical work in a collaboration, but not for their position in authors list or in a hierarchy. This automatically makes this more fair. Yes, it eliminates an incentive to work on a managerial track rather than on technical. So, and one of the examples I think is for not the only, not the perfect, but breakthrough prize, which was discovered, was awarded a few years ago, I think, for a discovery in physics to 1,000 people. Yes, 1,000 people collaborated, they contributed, and they are awarded. So that's why what I want to say is that it is fair. It is fair. What is not fair is to award or to somehow accord benefits to individual for the work which is actually collective. Yes, and the claim that Higgs boson mass is 125 GeV, actually this claim belongs to a group, to all the collective, rather than just individual who published this first, or because that's very wrong incentives, what I want to say. So the bottom line is the antinomy only locally resolvable, one of the local resolutions I am proposing. And so it embodies the non-epistemic elements which needs to be mitigated. And basically what is necessary for this is certain, to resolve this locally, is the certain reconfiguration of the values in scientific community. That's the proposal. Of course, it requires this discussion of this in justification if it applies. So it is. But thank you very much for your attention.